All right, everyone, this is going to be a quick walkthrough of this assignment, whether you do it in class or out of class, and it's titled Designing a Narrative Reading or Writing Activity. Reading/writing activity. So this will be the idea of you select a text and then you write a variety of questions that would allow students to respond either with short answer or longer answers to cover several reading and writing standards in your grade level. So what you're going to do is you can read through the instructions here, but you also have the exact same instructions if you just make a copy of the template right there. All right, so you make a copy of this template and make sure that your share settings are set to anyone with the link can edit. All right, and then what you're going to do is, what you'll do at this point is you'll say, okay, I'm going to be teaching, or right now I'm working with a class in the practicum that's in 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th grade or whatever it is. And then you want to go and review the standards for that particular grade level. So let's say that right now I'm working over at Madison Junior High, working with an 8th grade class. I would click on the reading standards, and I'm looking specifically at these standards for reading of literature because this is going to be narrative based. And I'm looking at these and trying to figure out, okay, what kind of questions could I ask in relation to the text that we're going to cover right here of students? How could I get them to compare and contrast the structure of two or more? What would a question look like, whether it was a short response or a longer response? Or what question could I design that would ask them to analyze how particular lines of dialogue or incidents, et cetera, et cetera. So you're glancing at your reading standards to figure out what sort of questions could you pair with a text to get students thinking in those ways. Then you'll also look at the writing standards for that grade level. And I'd be looking at either writing arguments or maybe writing informative or explanatory text, or maybe even, they're actually not writing narratives, they're responding to narratives. So I would focus on writing informative or explanatory text and then writing arguments. And then you'll be looking at your text and saying, okay, are there any of these types of questions I could pose to students? Could I ask them to support a particular claim with some logical reasoning or evidence from the text? So you're taking these standards and you're going to turn them into short and longer response questions to ask your students based on a text that you pick. Now, by you pick, I'm actually giving you two options to speed up the process. You're going to preview the two narrative texts below and select the one that you feel is best suited to the class you're working with right now. That can be based on readability, that can be based on the topic, the content, maybe interest, but I'll leave that up to you. And if neither of them fit, by all means, you could go wrangle another text. I'm fine with that. But if, let's say that I choose this first selection. Okay, this, by the way, is called the High Dive. This is an excerpt. I don't need to use an entire book or story. I can just use an excerpt to get kids to practice these things and provide them a little background. I can use the High Dive, that's selection 1, or I could do this one, selection 2. This is from a National Book Award finalist. This is from Jason Reynolds' novel, a short excerpt as well. I'm going to pick the one that I feel is the best fit for my students, and then I'll just delete the other one. So let's say that I chose the first one. I could just take this whole thing and then delete that and then just work with the text. Or if I find my own text, I can copy and paste one of about this length, excerpt of about this length and begin the assignment. So what have I done? I've reviewed my standards for my grade level and for reading and writing. Then I've decided which text I'm going to use for this activity. And then what I do is I look at that narrative reading and those narrative reading and writing standards and read the text. Look at the standards, look at the text, read the text. Look at the standards and read the text. And you're going to use this insert comments feature to come up with questions of varied degrees of difficulty. So we want you to come up with, let's see here. It says we want you to come up with 6 to 10 questions that are shorter answer ones, and then 3 to 4 slightly longer writing prompts that ask students to write, short to medium length responses. So for example, let's say I'm reading through here. I talk a lot, just not out loud where anyone can hear. At least I used to be that way. I read through a little bit. And then I look at the standards for reading, 8th grade reading. I'm thinking, okay, this is a narrative text. What's going on at the beginning of this? I could maybe make a question about how analyzing how particular lines or descriptions or incidents are contributing to da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. and I would go over here, right on the side of the text, and right about where it stops, where I want kids to read to, I would go to Insert Comment, and then I would put that standard in there, okay? So let's say that this is the one that I'm working with. I don't know if this is really a good fit, but we're just modeling it. Okay, I'll put the standard in there, and then I'm going to come up with my question that I'd ask students. How does the opening description, now I could make this, and this question needs to be geared towards this standard, driven by this standard. Now I can make the answer choices multiple choice and have them decide, okay? Or I could just leave it short answer, but I want you to mix it up. Some short answer, maybe some multiple choice, but the goal is to come up with 6 to 10 questions that are based on those standards, okay? That are just really, really short response ones from students, either very short response or multiple choice. Now remember, you do need to hit comment after you copy and paste your standard in, and you come up with your question. And the reason is, if you don't hit comment, then it won't be there when I go to open it up and grade your questions. Okay, comment, click. Okay, but I'm going to hit cancel in this case. So I want to do 6 to 10 questions. Then I also want to look at those writing standards and come up with 3 to 4 writing prompts that ask students to write short to medium length responses. So I might go into like the writing standards here. Look at these writings. Let's take a look at some. Maybe I could do something with this one right here. Support claims with logical reasoning. So what am I going to do? I'm going to copy my standard. I go into my text. Let's say I read something here that fits with this. Okay, I'm going to go to Insert Comment. Or you can also just use the keyboard shortcut right there, I guess. Paste that standard in and come up with my question. What evidence from the text supports the idea that, et cetera, et cetera? And so that would be an example of a slightly longer response where they have to either make a claim or justify a claim. But again, the reading and writing standards are driving this. So it's not like all of these have to come from the writing standards and all of these have to come from the reading standards. You can mix it up, but the idea is that you're looking at the standards for reading, standards for writing, looking at the text, and coming up with crafting questions that are based on those content standards. As long as you have 6 to 10 shorter response ones or multiple choice, either way, a little bit of both, I guess, and then 3 to 4 slightly longer writing prompts, questions that have writing prompts they need to respond to, then you've done your job. Okay, so if you'd like to see an example of what it looks like when you're done, you might right here on step 6, click on this link, and you can see an example from a past student, where this is the end of one of the selections. And so she's got her questions. Here's her standard that it's correlated with. Looks like a 7th grade standard. Elevators can sometimes symbolize by. Okay, and then one narrative technique is known as stream of consciousness. It occurs when, and this is based on this writing standard. So you've seen she's gone through and she's created a number of questions, some very short response, some slightly longer response, some longer response based on the standards. The standards drive your questions. Okay, and that's what it'll look like when you're all done. Make sure, once again, that you hit, after you type in your questions in the comment feature, after you put insert comment, okay, make sure that you hit comment when you get it all done with your standard in there, as well as your question. Okay, make sure that you hit comment so it doesn't just evaporate. So with that, good luck. And that is a brief overview of this assignment called Designing a Narrative Reading and Writing Activity.